Gallbladder 1 is located very approximately half a cun lateral to the outer canthus of the eye. Palpate laterally to find the lateral orbital margin. Mark your point just on the edge of that orbital margin. Be careful not to move back into this fleshy area because there are other points there. Gallbladder 6 is located 1/4 distance between gallbladder 7 and stomach 8. Gallbladder 14 is located above the pupil looking directly forwards, 1 cun superior to the eyebrow. To locate this point you need to stand directly in front of the person, have them look forwards. Remember the distance from the centre of the glabella to the anterior hairline is 3 cun, which would enable you to calculate your 1 cun. You can locate this point in a dip that's formed when the brow starts to come away from the skull. To locate gallbladder 20, palpate up the groove in between the sternocleidomastoid and trapezius muscles. As you get to the base of the occiput, you will find a nice depression. Gallbladder 20 is in the centre of that depression. Stomach 1 is located inferior to a pupil looking directly forwards in a depression between the eyeball and the infraorbital ridge. So to locate this point you need to actually stand in front of the person, have them look towards you and mark your point in a depression between the bone and the eyeball itself. Stomach 2 is located 1 cun inferior to a pupil looking directly forwards. To find this point, you'll need to stand directly in front of the person, palpate inferior to the pupil by about 1 cun, and you should feel a dip, which is the infraorbital foramen. Don't press too hard though, because there's a nerve here and it can be quite tender. Stomach 3 is located inferior to a pupil looking directly forwards, level with the lower border of the ala nasi. To find this point you need to stand directly in front of the person, have them look forwards, think of a line running through their pupil and coming down and marking this point on a level with the inferior border of the ala nasi. This point is frequently just lateral to the nasolabial groove. Sanjiao 17 is located in the dip behind the earlobe. It's between the ramus of the mandible and the mastoid process. Be careful that you don't put this point on bone, it's in between the bones in a dip. When a person opens their jaw, a groove forms anterior to the tragus. Palpate in this groove and locate Sanjiao 21 in this groove anterior to the supratragic notch. Sanjiao 23 is located towards the lateral end of the eyebrow in a nice dip on the supraorbital margin. If you palpate towards the end of the eyebrow, most people you'll find there's a nice cleft in the bone. Bladder 1 is located 1 fen medial and superior to the inner canthus of the eye. If a person scrunches up their eyes, a nice depression forms here, and that's where you're going to find bladder 1. Bladder 3 is located directly superior to bladder 2, half a sun into the anterior hairline, which means it's on the same level as Do24. Bladder 3. Bladder 8 is located 5.5 sun into the anterior hairline, 1.5 sun lateral to the midline. The easiest way to find bladder 8 is to find bladder 7 and then move posteriorly by 1.5 sun. Bladder 10 is located 1.3 sun lateral to Do15. It's 4.5 sun from Do15 to the mastoid process. So divide this area into 3 and just come a little closer to the posterior midline. You'll be on the lateral edge of the trapezius muscle. Extra point supreme yang is located half a sun posterior to the midpoint of a line joining the outer canthus and the lateral extremity of the eyebrow. Make an imaginary line, come halfway, move back half a sun until you're into this fleshy area which is lateral to the lateral orbital margin. Sanjiao points on the forearm are best located with the arm laying flat on the bed and the elbow turned outwards. To find Sanjiao 5, come 2 sun proximal to Sanjiao 4, in between the radius and the ulna. You should be on the radial side of the tendon of extensor digitorum communis. If the person wiggles their fingers, this tendon will come into relief. Sanjiao 6 is located 3 sun proximal to Sanjiao 4. It's in between the radius and the ulna, and it's on the radial side of the tendon of extensor digitorum communis. Wiggling the fingers will bring this tendon into relief.
Pericardium 6 is on the flexor aspect of the forearm. It's 2 sun proximal from pericardium 7, and it's in between the 2 tendons palmaris longus and flexor carpi radialis. Large intestine 4, you're going to find the length of the second metacarpal bone. So running your finger down, finding the base, making sure that you're not actually on the carpal bones themselves, finding the midpoint of that shaft of bone, coming between the first and second metacarpals, nearer to the second than the first in the muscle.
Stomach 36 is located approximately 13 sun superior to the prominence of the lateral malleolus on the anterior border of tibialis anterior. The easiest way to find it is to palpate down the tibial tuberosity. Find the base of the tibial tuberosity and move slightly laterally until you fall into a nice dip on the anterior border of tibialis anterior. This point is also 3 sun inferior to the inferior border of the patella.